Warning! This show isn't safe for pearl clutchers, faint hearts, or anyone who thinks government shutdowns are just a quirky political drama. What you're about to hear is blunt, unfiltered, and guaranteed to make your average CNN panelist sweat through their press suit. We'll use facts the media buries, sarcasm that stings, and humor so dark it might just need night vision goggles. If you're easily offended, go listen to NPR and let them sing you lullabies about bipartisanship. For the rest of you, buckle in, pour the coffee, and get ready, because this is Data and Dissonance, and we don't do soft landings.
Another day, another circus in D.C. And this time, the clowns are about to lock the tent. Midnight tonight, the government runs out of money, and instead of doing their jobs, these career politicians are busy pointing fingers like toddlers fighting over the last juice box. Democrats are demanding more giveaways. Republicans are holding the line, and the media? They're already sharpening the knives to blame Trump. But here's the kicker. While they posture, the lights on real Americans are about to flicker. Federal workers, soldiers, border agents, families depending on checks, all pawns in a power game. We're not here to cry about it. We're here to expose it. So grab your coffee, because this isn't just a shutdown. It's a showdown, and you're about to hear the truth they don't want you talking about. All right, folks. You know I can't break down a Washington train wreck without bringing in the crew. First up, Brian, the man who thinks a government shutdown is just a chance to buy more ammo and fly more flags. If MAGA had a hype man, it'd be this guy, and he'd probably charge admission. Next, we've got Rachel. She's like the independent fact-checker who slipped past TSA. While Brian's yelling, "Drain the swamp," she's scribbling notes about who's actually pulling the levers and who's just blowing smoke. Then there's Daniel, our resident conspiracy theorist. If the lights go out at midnight, he's already convinced it's not about budgets. It's about lizard people cutting the power grid. And honestly, after watching Congress, I can't say he's completely wrong. And rounding it out, Skylar, progressive Green Party firebrand, who probably wishes we'd shut the government down every week if it meant spending the money on solar panels and free kale smoothies. She's here to keep us honest, or at least to annoy Brian, which is almost as fun. Together, they're the voices that make sense of the madness, or at least argue loud enough to make it entertaining. Let's dive in. Today's chaos in D.C. reminds me of something straight out of a Caleb Rourke thriller. Backroom deals, power grabs, and the people left holding the bag. That's why this episode is brought to you by my own Caleb Rourke thriller series, starting with the Covenant Protocol and the Prophet Directive, with Book 3, Black Echo Rising on the horizon. If you want political intrigue, covert operations, and a hero who actually fights for something bigger than himself, this is your next binge read. And while you're at it, grab a bag of our Data and Dissonance coffee blends. High Lakes Light Roast, Rock Creek Medium Roast, or Bitterroot Dark Roast. Roasted in the USA, built for long nights and strong mornings. Hit the store, support the show, and fuel your fight. All right, let's not waste any more time. The clock is literally ticking. At midnight tonight, Uncle Sam runs out of cash, and Congress is playing chicken with your paycheck. Democrats want more spending, Republicans say enough is enough, and the media is already greasing the blame cannon to fire straight at Trump. But here's the reality. This isn't just politics, it's power. When the government shuts down, the people in charge don't suffer. They still get paid, they still have their security, and they still get chauffeured to their steak dinners. The pain falls on the little guy. The federal worker furloughed, the soldier wondering if his family's check clears, the border agent left hanging. So tonight, we're breaking it all down. Who caused this mess? Who benefits from the chaos? And what it really means for you? And we'll do it the way we always do, by grilling this panel with the tough questions, throwing a little dark humor on top, and making sure you walk away with the truth. Buckle up, because this is the Shutdown Showdown. All right, first question for the crew. Plain and simple. Who's to blame for this mess? Democrats say Republicans are holding the line hostage. Republicans say Democrats are stuffing the bill with healthcare bribes and open border nonsense. Midnight's coming fast. Brian, kick us off. Who do you point the finger at and why?
Artie, it's not even a debate. This one's on the Democrats. They had a clean, continuing resolution, a stopgap to keep the lights on. But no, they had to strap on their little progressive wish list and act like this is the moment to shove every entitlement program down America's throat. They want to keep the border wide open, they want to protect their sacred subsidies, and they're perfectly fine using hardworking Americans as bargaining chips. Republicans didn't ask for handouts, they asked for fiscal sanity. So if the lights go off tonight, it's because the Democrats flipped the switch.
Brian coming in hot, shocker. Honestly, if Democrats told Brian the sky was blue, he'd run outside just to prove it's red, white, and blue. But fair point. You're saying they overplayed their hand. Rachel, let me throw it your way. You're the one who actually reads the fine print instead of just yelling fake news at the TV. Who do you see as the main culprit here?
This is one of those times where blame is a little murkier. Republicans did put forward a clean resolution, but it's not exactly clean. There are cuts baked in that Democrats will never accept, especially when it comes to Medicaid and ACA subsidies. At the same time, Democrats are demanding provisions that have no place in a short-term funding bill. It's political theater on both sides, and the American people are caught in the crossfire. If anything, the blame falls on the culture of Congress itself. A system addicted to crisis governance, where every deadline becomes a hostage situation.
See, that's why we keep Rachel around. She manages to roast both parties without throwing a single punch, and somehow we all feel guilty anyway. But Daniel, I know you're chomping at the bit. Tell me this isn't just about dollars and cents. Who's really pulling the strings behind this so-called shutdown?
Artie, you already know. This isn't just about budgets, it's about leverage. Every time there's a shutdown, the same patterns emerge. Fear, panic, chaos, and who thrives in chaos? The permanent state, the bureaucrats, the think tanks, and the global financial interests that want America distracted while they move the real chess pieces. You think it's coincidence that while Congress is bickering, Wall Street is making bets on Treasury instability, or that foreign adversaries are watching to see if America stumbles. The shutdown isn't dysfunction, it's a controlled burn. Someone profits every time the lights flicker.
And there it is. Daniel's already got us looking for smoke-filled rooms with bankers and lizard people holding the light switch. You never disappoint, brother. Skylar, let's round this out with you. You've got the progressive glasses on. Who's guilty here?
It's Republicans, full stop. Democrats are trying to fund programs that keep families afloat. Healthcare, social safety nets, education. Republicans are obsessed with austerity at the exact moment people need help most. They've convinced themselves that slashing support for the vulnerable is fiscal responsibility. But what it really is cruelty dressed up in a suit. The government doesn't shut down because Democrats want people to have health care. It shuts down because Republicans would rather see Americans suffer than admit that social programs work.
Skylar blaming Republicans. Shocking, I know. If they announced tomorrow that Congress was handing out free kale chips, she'd be first in line with a tote bag. But hey, you gave us the left's framing, and that's what we needed. All right, that's question 1 in the books. Let's crank this up a notch. Okay, next question. Let's say the lights actually go out at midnight. Checks delayed, agencies shuttered, federal workers furloughed. What's the real-world fallout going to look like? And more importantly, does it hurt Republicans or does it hurt Democrats more when the dust settles? Brian, fire away.
Artie, look, people are going to feel it, no doubt. You've got military families wondering about paychecks, border agents in limbo, and bureaucrats suddenly discovering what it's like to live in the private sector. But politically, this hurts Democrats more. Every time a shutdown happens, they scream about cruelty. But the truth is, most Americans know the government wastes more money in a day than they'll ever see in a lifetime. When voters see Republicans standing firm, it looks like discipline. When Democrats throw a tantrum about lost subsidies, it looks like entitlement. The pain will be temporary, but the reminder that Democrats will bankrupt the country for ideology, that'll stick.
Brian, I swear, if they shut down the DMV tomorrow, you'd probably call it the greatest day in American history. But point taken, you're saying Republicans come out looking tough. Rachel, what's your read? Who really takes the hit when this thing drags on?
Shutdowns are messy. Both sides try to weaponize the suffering, but it usually backfires on whoever's perceived as the instigator. The public remembers furloughed workers and delayed paychecks more than they remember the fine print of a continuing resolution. Historically, Republicans tend to shoulder more of the blame because they're the ones pushing cuts. That said, Democrats aren't blameless. If they keep demanding add-ons that have nothing to do with keeping the government running, independents will see it as reckless. In short, nobody wins, but the side that looks less willing to compromise usually loses more ground.
Classic Rachel answer. Everyone's guilty, no one's innocent, and the only winners are the therapists cashing in on our political trauma. Daniel, let's hear it. What does the fallout really look like in your world?
Shutdowns are distractions, Artie. Yes, workers feel the pain, but that's surface level. The deeper fallout is how it erodes faith in the system. Every shutdown chips away at public trust, makes people more cynical, more angry, more likely to throw up their hands and say, "Why bother?" And that's not an accident. The people who want centralized power thrive when Americans lose faith in self-government. They point to dysfunction and say, "See, you need more control from above." The real-world fallout isn't just checks delayed. It's another step toward conditioning people to accept a system that's broken on purpose.
Daniel turning a government shutdown into step 47 on the road to dystopia. I half expect you to tell me FEMA camps are taking reservations already. Skylar, bring us home. When the shutdown pain hits, who bleeds politically?
Republicans do. Every time. People remember the human cost. They remember moms missing paychecks, soldiers in limbo, families struggling because their government decided to treat them like bargaining chips. Democrats will frame themselves as fighting for health care, for stability, for dignity. Republicans will be painted as the ones cheering for chaos. And when November comes, those stories stick. You can call it spin, you can call it narrative, but it's also reality. Voters punish the party that looks like it enjoys the shutdown, and right now, that's Republicans.
Skylar's out here handing Democrats the campaign talking points like she's getting commission. But hey, that's the progressive gospel. All right, we've blamed them, we've talked fallout. Let's close this out with the big one. Last one for tonight, and it's the big one. Does a shutdown actually change anything? Or is this just more DC theater where everyone plays their role, nothing really shifts, and Americans just get screwed in the middle? Brian, you've got the mic first. Is this fight worth it, or are we spinning our wheels?
Artie, it's worth it. You don't drain a swamp by politely asking the gators to move. You have to choke off their water. Same with government spending. If Republicans don't draw a line somewhere, we're going to drown in debt, crushed by entitlements, and owned by China. Every dollar Democrats want to shove into Medicaid subsidies or border giveaways is a dollar we don't have. A shutdown may sting, but it's a necessary sting. It forces people to recognize just how bloated and unnecessary half of these programs are. So yeah, it matters, because sometimes the only way to fix a system is to break it and rebuild it stronger.
Brian with the burn it all down so we can save it speech. Remind me not to let you babysit my grandkids if the Monopoly board flips. You'd probably call it a teaching moment about free markets. Rachel, your turn. Is this anything more than theater?
Shutdowns are mostly theater. They're leverage tools, not genuine reform. The government doesn't actually shrink during a shutdown. It pauses. Essential services keep running, the debt keeps growing, and as soon as a deal is struck, the spending machine roars back to life. What does change is perception. People become more aware of dysfunction, more frustrated, more cynical. That's the real impact. Not policy, but psychology. Unless one side manages to extract a major concession, the shutdown itself doesn't solve anything. It just deepens the divide and hardens the partisan lines.
Leave it to Rachel to be the sober one, reminding us that Washington always finds a way to get drunk on your tax dollars, no matter what. Daniel, I know you're going to tell me this isn't just theater. So what is it?
Artie, theater is exactly what it is, but it's also ritual. Shutdowns are pressure valves. They let the ruling class blow off steam, distract the public, and remind everyone who's really in control. Nothing changes because it's not meant to change. The debt grows, the bureaucracy expands, and the people get squeezed. But the spectacle convinces voters that a battle is happening, that someone is fighting for them. In reality, the fight is staged, the outcome is predetermined, and the American people are the audience, paying admission with their paychecks and their patience. So no, it doesn't change anything. It just conditions us for the next act.
Daniel basically just called Congress a WWE match where the script's been written. And honestly, I can picture Schumer in spandex and it's ruining my night. Skylar, let's wrap it up with you. Do shutdowns actually matter, or is it all smoke and mirrors?
They matter because they reveal priorities. When Republicans force a shutdown, they're saying their ideology matters more than stability, more than families being able to pay rent, more than soldiers being able to feed their kids. That's not just theater, that's cruelty in action. Shutdowns may not permanently change policy, but they change lives in the moment. They hurt real people. And when voters see who chose that path, it leaves a scar. So, yes, it matters because it exposes what each side is willing to sacrifice. And Republicans, once again, are willing to sacrifice working families to prove a point.
Skylar's got us picturing Republicans as cartoon villains twirling mustaches while families starve. And Brian's over there nodding like, damn, right. But that's the panel for you. 3 questions, 4 takes, and somehow we're all a little more confused and a little more caffeinated. Let's bring it home. All right, we've spent the last 15 minutes pointing fingers, unpacking fallout, and wondering if this shutdown showdown is actually going to change anything. Midnight's still coming, Congress is still bickering, and America is still stuck in the middle. But before we wrap this thing up, I want to give each of my panelists one last shot. Their final thoughts on what tonight means, what tomorrow could bring, and what listeners should take away from all this chaos. Brian, Rachel, Daniel, Skylar, this is your chance to put a bow on it. Lay it out straight, long form, no interruptions. After that, I'll close us out with my own take. Let's start with Brian, because I know he's dying to light one last fire before we cut to the outro.
Artie, this shutdown is the kind of fight Republicans need to have. For too long, we've caved, compromised, and let Democrats pile up debt that our kids and grandkids will never crawl out from under. A shutdown isn't fun, but neither is bankruptcy, and that's where we're headed if we don't put the brakes on. Democrats don't want compromise. They want control. They want every crisis to be solved by government handouts and endless spending. At some point, someone has to say no, and if that means taking a black eye for a week or two, so be it. Better a bruise now than a broken back later.
Shutdowns are always billed as dramatic turning points, but more often than not, they're reminders of how broken the system is. We've normalized brinksmanship instead of responsible governance, and we've convinced ourselves that spectacle is strategy. The truth is, real people pay the price, and nothing fundamental shifts when the lights come back on. If there's a takeaway tonight, it's this. Don't let politicians trick you into believing they're heroes for surviving a crisis of their own making. Demand better. Because as long as we reward dysfunction, dysfunction is exactly what we'll keep getting.
Shutdowns aren't failures, they're signals. They signal to the American people that their government isn't working, and that's by design. The permanent state thrives when people are disillusioned, when they lose faith in self-rule, when they throw up their hands and accept centralized power. Every crisis is an opportunity for consolidation. While we argue about who caused the shutdown, the same elites quietly make sure they never miss a paycheck, never lose an ounce of power, never face accountability. My final thought is this: don't be fooled by the theater. Look at who profits when the curtain falls. That's where the truth lives.
What I see is cruelty disguised as principle. Republicans would rather let families go without than admit that healthcare, housing, and social programs matter. They act like fiscal hawks, but their military budgets and tax breaks for billionaires never seem to hit the chopping block. The people who suffer in shutdowns aren't politicians. They're the workers who live paycheck to paycheck, the soldiers with families to feed, the single moms counting on stability. My final thought is simple. Governance is about responsibility, not ideology. And Republicans once again showed they'd rather burn down the house than admit they don't own it alone.
Here's where I land. Shutdowns aren't pretty and they're not painless. Real people get caught in the crossfire and the blame game turns into a feeding frenzy. But let's be crystal clear. The reason we're here isn't because Republicans demanded sanity. It's because Democrats demanded excess. They tied up a clean resolution with their pet projects and subsidies, then acted shocked when the other side said no. That's not negotiation. That's hostage-taking. Does a shutdown fix everything? No. But sometimes the only way to remind America that government is supposed to serve the people, not itself, is to slam the brakes. Midnight may bring darkness in DC, but it should also shine a light on just how broken this system really is. And as always, don't let the media gaslight you into thinking both sides are equally guilty. The fingerprints are clear, and the smudges belong to the left. We'll be back tomorrow to cover the fallout. Who blinked, who broke, and who actually stood their ground. Until then, remember to speak truth, stir thought.